Can you hear me? Good? Solid? Yes? All right. I want to say thank you for everybody to come out today in this lovely weather, particularly the audience members, particularly the ones I bribe with extra credit points. Thank you very much for coming out. I want to thank our 3 judges. Thank you for volunteering. And it's also a pleasure to be up here with my colleague, Liz Canapari. Inside joke I have for you, a pan truck with 2 filing cabinets waiting outside for you. So I hope you enjoy that. Now a little bit of the facts of the case. Jack Phillips is a cake artist, similar to you see on reality TV show Cake Wars. He is the owner of Masterpiece Bakery. Mr. Phillips refused to make a customized rainbow cake for a gay wedding for a Mr. Craig and a Mr. Mullins because it offended his religious convictions. Now, the Supreme Court granted cert. In issuing the writ of cert, the Supreme Court stated, the question presented by the case was whether applying Colorado's public accommodations law to compel Mr. Phillips to create expressions that violate his sincerely held religious beliefs about marriage, violates the free speech and free exercise clause of the First Amendment. All right? Now, I have to start off by saying this. I don't agree with my client's positions. I don't agree with his religious beliefs. I don't agree with his business practices. But I'm here to strenuously defend his First Amendment rights and the maintenance of a vibrant, pluralistic society. The First Amendment, if you look at it holistically, envelops 2 central tenets to the American culture. The freedom of conscience, which also protects you from being compelled against your conscience. It also protects the freedom of political toleration, meaning that we all have to get along in a pluralistic society and respect other people's viewpoints. The clauses of the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, prevents the government from compelling one into a religion run by the state. It creates a free market of religion, just as James Madison predicted. It protects your right to assemble, and more importantly, it protects your right to assemble like-minded people and exclude people you don't like or don't want to associate with. It protects your right to free speech, expression, and the press. Importantly, it prevents the government from compelling you against your conscience or into activities that you don't believe are justifiable. I mean, it even protects you in the Fifth Amendment from giving witness against yourself. Gives you the right to remain silent. The Supreme Court has routinely established a very high bar for compelled speech. For example, in West Virginia v. Board of Ed, the court stated that schools could not compel students to salute the flag or say the Pledge of Allegiance. In Woolley v. Maynard, it stated the state of New Hampshire. Yes.
Question from the Chief Justice, one of the justices. Could you explain the chronology of how the customers came into the cake store and requested the cake? I appreciate your constitutional arguments, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about the facts of the case.
I don't know more about the facts of the case. I know that they came in the month of July. It was a 5-minute discussion. They asked to have this rainbow wedding cake made. The baker denied the request, said they could basically buy any cake that's already in the stream of commerce in his store, but it would not be commissioned into making the rainbow cake. When they rejected, they greeted him with a couple expletives and left the store. It was about a 5-minute discussion, so really there's no huge chronology, involved. All right? Yes?
So we're doing this like a Supreme Court sort of mock thing, right?
All right.
So I have a question. So what would stop a hotel owner from allowing them to rent out rooms to a gay couple that's traveling interstate? Wouldn't that implicate all kinds of other issues?
Absolutely, and particularly at the federal level, you're talking about interstate commerce clause being invoked as part of the Civil Rights Act. And you would also involve the blanket policy of discriminating based on identity.
So wouldn't that be reason just to not allow it? That's a slippery slope, isn't it?
As you can see in my argument, I will actually answer that question. All right. So in Woolley v. Maynard, it established that the state could not compel a man to actually drive around with the state motto on their license plate, live free or die. Could not compel him in the license plate because it violated his religious beliefs. In Engel v. Vitale, the court said students could not be compelled into prayer. In Wallace v. Jaffrey, the court stated that students couldn't even be compelled into a moment of silence because it had religious characteristics. In Hurley v. Irish and Gay and Lesbian Organization of Boston, the court stated that the parade organizers did not have to accept groups into the parade that forced them to affirm a position against their religious beliefs. In part, that's what this case is about. Forcing a baker into a compelled symbolic expression to affirm a position against his religious beliefs. Theoretically, if the Colorado government was to be accepted, other state policies could be adopted which could force a Muslim baker to make a baptismal cake that stated Christ is the only Lord. If the other states could say they want to force a gay opera singer to sing at the wedding of one of those repugnant hate mongers of the Westboro Baptist Church. Or it could force a black sculptor in commission of making a sculpture of Nathan Bedford Forrest, the founder of the KKK, for one of their weddings. Everyone would argue this is obviously a violation of their conscience and their First Amendment rights. I would protect their rights in those cases. But the government of Colorado also knows this. It also knows that it has created exemptions for those scenarios. It has allowed gay bakers in the state of Colorado on multiple occasions to reject cakes and baking cakes that have biblical phrases on them because they found them offensive. I support the right to conscience for those gay bakers. They should have that exemption. In this case, however, the Civil Rights Commission of Colorado refused to make an exemption for Mr. Phillips because of his sincerely held religious beliefs. Now let me be clear.
Mr. Robson.
Yes.
How is making a cake?
Well, it denotes an actual form of expression, just like wearing something on your shirt, just like making a flag, just like drawing a picture. I can draw a picture that denotes speech. I mean, if I forced you to write, for example, to wear a Confederate flag lapel on your pin, that's a form of political expression, right? If I forced you to make a cake in a swastika, right, that's a form of political expression, right?
Okay,
all right.
I'm poker face.
All right, you're poker face. I would argue that. Now, let me be clear. If Mr. Phillips was to hung a sign outside his building that said, "I don't serve gays," we would not be having this discussion. I would not be defending Mr. Phillips, all right? But that's not what happened in this case. It is clear that the facts of the case don't support that. Mr. Phillips was free to, he said he'd freely sell Mr. Craig and Mr. Mullins any of the cakes that are in his store. He did not want to be commissioned against his will to make a cake, a rainbow cake, which has a symbolic component to it against his religious convictions. Yes?
This is all about a rainbow?
A rainbow cake, layered rainbow cake.
So basically, it would have been okay if they would have bought a cake out of the freezer and then took it home and just put a rainbow on it.
Absolutely. The intensity of everyone's involved in this case clearly illustrates the powerful symbolic expressive nature of a rainbow cake. Mr. Mullen and Mr. Craig specifically wanted it because it has expressive nature. Mr. Phillips refused to bake it because he didn't want to affirm that expression and violate his religious convictions. The court has clearly created a substantially high bar for compelled speech and creating rare exceptions only for the military and oaths in office. And also, it has created, however, in addition, let me say this. In addition, the politically preferred position, the rights doctrine, which suggests that when rights come in conflict with the First Amendment rights actually take precedent. Now, I would argue that in this case, it would also entail, in favor in this case, I would argue in this case, independently, the independent right to be compelled speech, you could find in favor of the baker simply on that variable, all right? I also, in addition, would contend that this is a clear example of the hybrid rights doctrine established in Smith versus the Employment Services of Oregon for cases that involve religious liberty and the rights that add additional weight to the free exercise claim. For example,